Okay, this is Planar Wars 8. The newest battle member is the Dunu Talos. This is a, let me go ahead and grab it over here. I've got 3 sets on here. I've got the Wu, I've got the Hook, and I've got the Dunu. The Wu and the Hook are the 2 that I listen to the most. So let's move over here real quick. This is the Dioko. Good set. Was the cheapest for a little while. Chi-Fi moving really quickly. It's got a little bit of a tuck, everybody knows. So I'm going to take this and not really discuss it. This is the 7 hertz. A lot of people like it. It's their favorite. I don't get a fit that is good for listening for more than 10 minutes or moving around really at all. So I'm going to take the 7 hertz out. Good set. Not going to be in this evaluation. The S12, good set, kind of intense. It's got good bass. But I don't really listen to it that much. I understand why people like it, so I'm going to go ahead and slide this out. And also, if we have lots of earphones, it's going to be difficult to kind of follow along. So I've got 3 of these plugged into Headamp 6 Pro, which is basically a 6-way splitter. I'm going to talk about how these 3 earphones relate to one another. The contender is the Talos. It's got, it says a 14.6 millimeter planar plus 2 BA. I believe I've read elsewhere there's super tweeters, those 2 BAs. I'm going to talk about the frequency graph, but most of this video is going to be related to it in planar mode, not in balanced armature switch on, because that's really not something that I would listen to. I'll address it just quite briefly. You open the package, you get a case that you might be familiar with. It's got tips in it. It's got a 1/4-inch adapter. Yay, because now I've got 4 out of 6 that are plugged in. And that is the set. Let me hold it up real quick so that you can get a look at it. You can see it's kind of a barrel shaped. It's probably I'm actually not sure. Maybe I'll put up an exploded view right about now. So fit is actually, when I saw the photographs, I thought fit might be an issue. It's really not. It fits fine. So that's what it looks like. It's got a switch right here, and then on is activating the balanced armature. This is set to off. I think most people are probably going to set this to off. So that's a close-up look. Let's go ahead and talk about some music and get going. Also, we'll take a look at the frequency graph. Okay, let's talk about the Dunu Talos. That is a close-up view of it right there. I should splash this across the screen in transparent mode. It's got a shell that actually fits good. It's got, I believe, a dual super tweeter BA in front of the planar that's tubed and it's running into the nozzle, and then you've got an exploded view of the planar driver and the back cap. That's what it looks like. Let's move to the left, and you've got polite sub-bass, mid-bass, very subtle glide, good mids, a gain, ear gain region that's completely reasonable. It's done well. There's a cut around 6 kilohertz. When I first listened to this, I got to say I wasn't really impressed. That was more related to how much power I was giving it. It's got a spike where it could be partly related to the 711 coupler, and then it's got a spike after 15K. So it's got plenty of treble energy. It's got a BA switch on it that I don't use, but let me show you while we're looking at this, and there it is. Yeah. That's hitting me in a bad spot, and I'm not really sure what genre so because I don't know what that's for, I'm not going to speak on it, and I'll just talk about this when I give my impression. So everything I say from this point forward is related to in standard mode where only a planar driver is doing any work. Now, let's go ahead and talk about a spider graph really quick. Let's talk about the mids. This is the Hook X, the Dunu Talos, and the Wu. As mentioned before, these are the ones that I listen to the most, and this is the latest and how I view this. The bass, which is the backbone, the rhythm section, poor driver or tuning impacts the mids and treble. So if the bass is done not well, it basically will ruin any set, particularly dynamic drivers, but really anything that's tuned poorly in the bass. I think that the Wu, for reasons I can't really explain, it could be the graph, it could be, I don't know. I think that the bass on the Wu is really good. I think that the Hook X is good. I think that the Dunu Talos, because it's kind of polite, and it lacks a little bit of energy when it comes to bass guitar pulls and releases and drum kits, so it's not a real library match. So I'd give it the Wu, the Hook, the Dunu Talos. When we get to the mids, this is where, when I tuned it up correctly on the Headamp 6 and gave it enough gain to get to 77 and be on equal footing with the Wu and the Hook X, I thought that the overall resolution of the Dunu is actually quite good. Focusing on things like finger slides on D by Randy Rhoads and other things like that, little musical Easter eggs, I found that the resolution was actually quite good. Get to the treble. I think that the Wu, I just like the woo a lot, and I think the treble tuning has a lot to do with that. I thought that that's quite good. Resolution, I'm going to give it to the DUNU Talos. Part of that is new toy fever. Part of that is DUNU as a brand that I trust and respect and has good QC. And it does sound like a different driver to my head, but that could be in my head, so take that with a grain of salt. But as if I sit right here, I think the res is slightly better. I think the stage and the tonality of the Hook X are still my benchmarks. I just think that it's the most musical set, and I enjoy it the most. So the Hook X is stage and tonality. I think value is the woo, and bass is the woo, and treble is the woo. And I think that the mids and the resolution go to the DUNU Talos. So that's the spider graph. And let me go ahead and drop that down, and we can start talking about some music. Let me go ahead and stop this real quick. Okay, let's talk about bass. 3 albums. I'm going to stack them in the bottom left corner. We're going to be using actually Fleetwood Mac the Chain, the bass in that. Dun, 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 dun. It's a great production. It's really good. It's a nice bass line. I'm going to use that. I'm also going to use Sultans of Swing by Dire Straits, and I'm also going to use Kill Jill because it's got a bass guitar and it's got a triple drop. I think that the DUNU tuning overall is more aimed at an audience with a slightly different library from mine, which has like Alice in Chains, or UGK, or the Beatles, or stuff like what I have, where I have some expectations for low frequency instruments like bass guitars, drum kits, deck mix drops. It's not really where this set shines. On these 3 albums, or these 3 tracks that I've got on the left corner on your screen, this isn't really a set that I would reach for. I'd probably reach for the woo or the hook, because there's more energy, more lively, and it's still not borking up the mids. So I would go with that. Moving into the mid frequencies, we've got Fleetwood Mac again, because there's so many vocals on that album. I find that to be just an excellent album for evaluating vocal replay, because it's got 4 singers, it's got 2 male, it's got 2 females. It's really good, and it's again very well produced. Also Chris Cornell doing cover of Prince's Nothing Compares to You on Sirius XM radio. You can see that on YouTube. Vocal dominant on a stool with an acoustic guitar and I think a cello in the background. It's very, very simple. And I think there's also maybe one other instrument, but it's really Chris Cornell's vocals and acoustic that's the focus of this, and a really epic song. I think his version is the best that I've ever heard of that track, better than the Sinead O'Connor that became famous. Also using Elton John with pianos. So Fleetwood Mac, Chris Cornell, and Elton John. I think that this is where the Talos shines. I think it resolves very well. First impressions were different, but I wasn't giving it as much gain and power as the other 2. Once I adjusted that, there's a lot to be said about adjusting your volume. Once I adjusted that, this kind of step forward as being really good with micro details, and giving an overall sense of getting every little bit, little Easter eggs that are in music. I felt like I was getting all of them. So I think that this really steps out in the mids in a way that maybe the woo and the hook don't. It's really mids where this does it, and not really anyplace else, but I think the mids show the driver's quality. Is it a derivative of the other ones? I don't know. If it is a newer driver, I can kind of pick up on that, but again, new item, slight mental bias could be in effect, but I find that the mids and the resolution is probably the best on the DUNU. Moving to treble, I've got Vivaldi, Heart, Barracuda to be specific, also Led Zeppelin, the cymbals on the Coda album. I thought it sounded energetic. I thought Vivaldi sounded great, actually. I like the replay on the hook better for this, but I thought that this sounded fine on the DUNU. I thought it sounded good. I thought that Heart, the Wilson sisters, I think that female vocals sounded pretty good, and I think the cymbal strike sounded good, energetic, slight bit tizzy, but was enjoying them. I didn't find the treble to be overly fatiguing, but I don't think it's quite as good as the woo and also the hook. So that is the bass and the mids and the treble. Okay, now let's put this all together for final thoughts. What I like the resolution. The technical abilities of the driver sound good. I like the strong brand behind it. That's a very important thing. Stuff can happen. When it does, you want to feel comfortable. I I think the mids are good. I think the mids step out as being a strong point, really show off the driver more than maybe the bass and the treble do. What I don't like, the price, actually. I don't like BA mode. I don't understand what it's for, and you can comment below if you do know. I'm not even mocking or trolling. I just don't understand. Not a fan of the bass, but if everything was tuned the way I like it, then that would be a problem for a lot of you out there. So, but for me personally, I'm not a fan of the bass. The treble can be a little hot, so that's borderline, but I'll mention it just for keep it on record. It's good. It can be kind of intense without the BA switch on. Final thoughts for the scales. For the bass, I would put this around here. For the mids, I'd put it around here. For the treble, I would put it around here. And for technicalities, I would put it around here. Full disclosure, I'm just talking out loud and don't have anything in front of me. I'm going to edit it when I do the video. That's my thoughts on the Dunu Talos. It's going to fit some people very well. It's kind of like a Dioko in its tuning with a little less bass, but it's not quite as dry, but it's technically probably better. But again, it's double the price. So there's that. And that's the Dunu Talos. Wu-Tang for life. Wu-Tang is for the children.